I'd like to say that it was an enjoyable read. It's not. Let me explain what I mean. This book, Defying Isis by Johnnie Moore, it's essential reading, but reading about any tragedy, any genocide, any massacre, of course, it's emotional, it's difficult, it's challenging, but we have to be aware of this. Whatever your religion, by the way, or lack of, just as a member of the human tribe, if you like, as a humanitarian, we have to be involved. Johnnie, thank you for writing it. You're going to be here all week, so I want to start off with a more general discussion. We'll get to ISIS later. But ISIS is one aspect of the persecution of Christians. Throughout the Islamic world, with one or two noble exceptions, but not many, it is very, very difficult to be a Christian today.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you almost can't believe that we're in the 21st century, and yet we're reading about the types of things that we're reading about. And we're reading about Christians being forcibly converted, kicked out of their homes, their children, women and children being put through incomprehensible experiences, from modern-day slave markets to the torture and beheading of even children. I mean, this is a really, really precarious thing. And those of us that have been following this for some time realize that what's unusual about it isn't that the church is being persecuted, it's that it's being done so publicly. I mean, I remember when I first started being involved in the persecuted church, it was in Asia, and I had to kind of find the stories, and occasionally someone would smuggle a story out and we would all talk about it. But this thing that ISIS is doing with putting it on the front pages and bragging about it and producing videos about it, I mean, that's a whole different thing. They're taunting the whole world. They're looking at the world in the eyes and saying, okay, we're doing this, stop us, because we're going to go until no one's left.
Yeah. It's not confined to one culture. There's no ethnic definition. It's happening in Africa, it's happening in South Asia, it happens in the Arab world, it happens in Iran, in Persia. And it's not always in a majority Muslim country. Nigeria, which I think is about 52–54% Christian, in the northern states that have imposed Sharia law, the first victims were other Muslims who were more moderate, and then the Christians. And there, the numbers are huge.
Well, and by the way, it's not just against Christians. I mean, this issue of religious persecution is an issue that is in every country of the world in various forms, but in egregious forms in certain countries. And I first encountered it in India. I was working with Christians in the north of India that had converted from the majority faith in the country, and radicals of that faith, Hindu radicals in that case, had attacked them. They'd burned down their churches. They'd attacked their children. But again, it was hidden. It was underground. But we're seeing something totally different. This is a much more public attack on Christianity, and and it doesn't look like it's ending.
India's interesting because India, which of course is a majority Hindu country, which has rather successfully embraced pluralism. I mean, by and large, Christianity is a major faith. I mean, I should declare an interest here. My wife's family, her mother's family are from India. They're Christians. In much, I'd say most of India, you can be a Christian, be respected, but the fringes of Hindu nationalism, these are not Muslims, the fringes of Hindu nationalism are very intolerant of Christians and Muslims, and they have used violence. The government might try to stop it, but it's a vast country with a large population. It's very difficult.
Well, and the truth is that most of that persecution has been localized, right? It's bad actors in a particular city or particular town that are trying to do something. I think what's different about what we're seeing at the hands of the Islamic State, ISIS in Iraq and Syria, and now in other countries that are pledging allegiance, in places like Libya in the northeast of Nigeria, and Al-Shabaab between Somalia and Kenya, is we're seeing state-sponsored abuse of Christians. Now, none of us believe that the Islamic State is an actual state, but they do control one contiguous piece of land that's larger than the United Kingdom. They are a influential movement that now, in effect, controls the majority of Libya, the whole northeast of Nigeria, that piece of land larger than the United Kingdom and Iraq and Syria, some large portions of Somalia, bleeding into Kenya, the factions of ISIS in Egypt. I mean, this is a very, very serious, very deliberate effort to eliminate these ancient Christian minorities. Now, when I start talking about this, is there a Christian genocide? Is even using the word Holocaust to describe what ISIS aims to do with Christians? People are rightfully skeptical, and I was skeptical when I started writing the book Defying Isis. But when I got into ISIS ideology and I actually read their own literature and listened to what they said, I realized this is absolutely intentional. I mean, the front page of the ISIS magazine in October, Dabiq,
the ISIS magazine. It's incredible, isn't it?
Published in English to send a message without a typo in it. The front page of the magazine in October was St. Peter's Square in Rome with an ISIS flag superimposed atop the obelisk in the center of St. Peter's Square. every single speech or written piece of communication by the leader of ISIS, Baghdadi, mentioned specifically marching all the way to Rome, the most well-known Christian city in the world. So while ISIS is made of equal opportunity psychopaths, that they just want to destroy anybody that doesn't agree with them, Muslim or otherwise, and they've killed more Muslims than anyone else, they particularly target Christians, and they have one aim: convert or die. That's it, and they will do here what they've done there if they have the opportunity.
Now, as I say, we're going to speak all week, so there are aspects of all this that we'll get to later. If people are saying, ask this or ask that, we'll get to everything here. I know you've been to Jordan, and Jordan, for all of its challenges, is within the region is enlightened, and Christians are tolerated. ISIS, they're not that far from Jordan. Jordan has a sophisticated but a small military. They're dependent on Saudi Arabia. Could they get into a country like Jordan? And if they did, they'd then be on the border with Israel. I mean, it's beyond comprehension.
Well, ISIS is everywhere, and this is the scary part. I mean, we've seen ISIS sympathizers, not just in the Middle East, but in every developed country in the world. I mean, I'm from the United States, so I know a lot more about the United States. And what I'll tell you is, in the United States, they're tracking ISIS-affiliated cells in all 50 states. In all 50 states. In fact, people kind of run past the news, right? We don't look at it in the big picture. But in the United States of America, I mean, we had a beheading in Oklahoma City. We had police officers attacked in the Brooklyn subway. We've had numerous ISIS sympathizers.
But every time this happens, we're told, no, it has nothing to do with Islamism. The person was crazy. It amazes me, whenever the IRA kills someone, it was always, they're a Catholic terrorist. It was never, they're crazy. But in this case, they were crazy.
Well, you can't separate the religious ideology from the ideology. You can't separate the two. And of course, it's insane to think that every Muslim in the world is a jihadist, just like it's insane to think that every Christian is a crusader. But the estimates, the actual statistical estimates, is that as many as, say, 5% of Muslims in the world, just like 5% of Christians in the world, embrace radical ideology. And when you're talking about 1 billion or 2 billion people, that's a really dangerous thing. And by the way, the world is getting more dangerous. I mean, 5 or 6 years ago, we basically only had one failed state in the world, Somalia. And then Iraq and Afghanistan, they were sort of failed, but they were moving in the right direction. But now we're living in a world where Somalia is a failed state, Libya is a failed state, Yemen's a failed state, Iraq and Afghanistan are going in the wrong direction. The whole northeast of Nigeria is lost. If it wasn't for the French, we probably would have lost Mali, and seeds of this in other countries of the world. And it is religious in nature. But I believe that the best of faith defeats the worst of religion. And that's why I'm such a big fan of the Jordanians. I mean, the Jordanians are doing more than anybody in the region to work together with Christians to protect Christians and other religious minorities. And they've made a big difference. In fact, I've met with the Christians that were evacuated by the Jordanian government out of the north of Iraq when things became very, very intense. And they're being taken care of by that government. And I think that's Exhibit A of the best of faith defeating the worst of religion. Muslims and Christians working together to combat their common enemy, which would like to behead us all.
Just as we end this interview, as I say, there are going to be many more of them. One thing you said earlier, no one is saying all Muslims are. We never say such a thing. No thinking, rational person, and no Christian worth the name would say all Muslims are. It's a straw man, I think, that is held up to try and embarrass us. It's simply not true. No one makes that absurd, crass generalization. We know about human nature. We know the vast majority of Muslims are good people just trying to live a decent life. It's a small minority who are hurting everyone, particularly Muslims, but they are targeting Christians. As I say, we're going to speak to you throughout the week with this very important book, Defying ISIS.